Welcome back to the Lickin the Dirt Podcast. This is episode number 29, and we are here with a man that needs, honestly, no introduction in our racing scene, but we are here with Mr. Greg Wheeling. Greg, how you doing?
Good, guys. Good to be here. My only question is, how come it took you 29 episodes to ask me on?
You were, honestly, I think we were talking about having you on a podcast before the podcast was even made. Chase, when did you make that? Chase has a picture that's like a fake thumbnail of like us interviewing you because I don't know if it was from around when we started the podcast or if it was from a long time ago, but it was always kind of an idea that we had. Definitely kind of crazy. It has taken a little bit, but you were always one we wanted to get around to talking to. You're our first, maybe. I would say that you're probably our first notable non-driver interview. Chase, have we had? I don't know if we've had any.
Well, other than like Braden and Riley, who are like more, that were more derby. I don't know if you want to consider them drivers.
Right,
I don't know how you want to determine that, but yeah. Other than that,
yeah. Well, and obviously, which we'll get into, but in your kind of your history, you were a driver, but kind of talking about like, you know, this is like. You've done a lot of stuff in racing, and I'm sure a lot of the people watching know that too. You've definitely made a name for yourself, but I'm excited to just get into it. So I'm gonna.
It's been a really good, fun career. I mean, there was no real career path or anything. Things just happened along the way.
Right. I'm certainly excited. So Chase, I'm gonna just hand it off to you and let you kind of ask Greg the first question. We'll go from there.
First question, we're gonna put the pressure on Greg here. Kind of just introduce yourself to everyone watching, in case they don't know who Greg Wheeling is. Just let them kind of introduce yourself a little bit. Who is Greg Wheeling?
Well, I'm from Franklin, Pennsylvania. Lived in the area most all of my life, and my dad raced, so I grew up with it. I mean, they tell me I went to my first race when I was 6 months old or whatever, and grew up, like I say, with my dad. He ran sprint cars mostly, but did some late model stuff and modified stuff, and I grew up and helped on the cars what I could, and actually drove a little bit myself for about 5 years, but then became an official and was fortunate enough that really kind of found my niche, and I've worked at every track, honestly, within, I don't know, 150, maybe 200 miles here at one point or another. So I'm a lifelong race fan.
Yeah. I already I know you just kind of brought it up. Obviously you've done so much in the sport, but you had a stint, which I didn't know this. This was a shock to me once you sent this resume over, but you had a stint as a driver. So you said that you raced stock cars and mini stocks. So what, in your driving time, I mean, did you enjoy it, or was it something you kind of wanted to get out of?
No, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
You know, it was just I didn't have even though stock cars, when I'm talking about stock cars, they were really stock cars.
Yeah.
And I started when I was 16, I think. And then I did that for a couple of years, and then got married, my wife and I, and my wife Thea, she hand scored for 25 years at a lot of the racetracks that I worked at. But I actually took our wedding money that we got for our wedding and bought a mini stock and ran that for three years or 4 years or something like that. And
yeah.
It had some success, but you know, we were starting a family, and it just wasn't in the cards.
Yeah. Which one did you like more, the mini stock or the stock car then?
Well, I mean, I was older, and the stuff I had was more competitive with the mini stock. They were rear wheel drive back then, but they were still 4 cylinders. So I guess I probably enjoyed that more because I was able to win some races along the way.
Oh, sweet. How many total race wins did you have in your career?
Oh, not that many.
Yeah.
8 or 10, maybe.
Yeah. When you were coming up through racing, like I don't know if we covered this, but like in your stint, what tracks did you mostly race at? Like what was there?
I raced at Tri-City, which is closest to my home. It was then and it is now.
Mm-hmm.
I raced at Mercer, and I raced at the old Butler Speedway. I think it was in Prospect. I don't even really, it hasn't been there for years. So really, that's the only three I ever raced at, I think.
Yeah. Kind of another one that just came to my head. Tri-City. How different was Tri-City then to now, like track wise? Kind of, I guess, surface.
Well, I mean, it was the same track. I mean, Tri-City started out as a quarter mile, but it was already, was it is now. So it was the same track. I mean, it was, you know, did I lose you guys?
You're still here. I'm just,
Okay.
it's frozen right now. It's okay. We can give it a second here.
All right.
Oh, it's coming back now.
Yep, you're back.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah, we're good.
All right. I can't see you, but that's all right. But it was it's pretty much the surface that it is now. When Mike and Roger had it, and I worked there back in, gosh, I don't remember what years. I get the years confused. They had brought in red clay, but it was the basic surface that the Tri-City has.
Greg, see, we were talking about your racing career. What was your racing number?
It was '05. That was my father's number.
So it's just handed down. So
Yep.
you mentioned that you got out of it after a couple years. Was that mainly just from funds and family matters?
Mainly funds. Yep.
Yeah. Did you ever get after that? Did you ever get an itch to get back inside of a race car full time, or not really?
I started shortly after that. I started working as an official, and that really, scratched that itch for me, and it kept me involved. And that was, and at the end of the night, I made a little money.
Yeah.
Didn't cost me money, so that at the time that was pretty important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you said kind of right there that you started working as an official shortly after that, and that's obviously one of the list of things that you've kind of done outside of the surface. But as an official, then how kind of like what was your? I guess what I'm trying to say is what was your tasks? I guess compared to like an official now, was it a lot different, or was it like back then? Was it harder because you didn't have all the technology, or?
Yeah, well, you didn't have the technology. I started out as a guy lining up cars in the pits, but
Right.
by the end of the year, I was doing the restart lineups on the racetrack, and there was no headphones. There was a telephone on the flag stand and a telephone
Oh.
at the flag pole in the infield, and the scorers had a telephone. So every time the yellow would come out, you'd run to the flagpole in the infield, you carried a clipboard, wrote down the order that the scorers gave you, ran back to the front stretch, and lined the cars up as they went by. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. Mercer, and I guess that would have been back. I think that was back. I don't remember if they had the covered grandstands there or not, but they actually had a cable that would save you from running to the infield flagpole, and it ran to the flag stand, and they would have big paperclip kind of things, and they scores write it down, and they hook the paper to this cable and send it down over the crowd's head to the flagman, and then he would hand it to me on the front straightaway, which was fine. But if you had more than 5 or 6 cautions, they only had that many paper clips, so somebody had to run down from the scorer stand to gather up the paper clips and take it back up so we could start all over again. So it was a lot different.
So I take it then if there was a guy that wouldn't line up in the correct spot or wasn't listening or something, there's a lot more of a pain in the butt to deal with than it is now with like receivers and stuff and other things like that.
Well, it was. I mean, you didn't usually have a lot of trouble. Guys would fight for a lap or so, but then they'd realize that that's the way it was going to be.
Yeah.
Occasionally, you'd had to stop and talk to somebody, but
Right.
that was never a problem for me. No.
Yeah. Chase, go ahead with another one of yours before I ask my next one.
Now, Greg, I feel like you're probably most known for being a flagman, and kind of how did you've mentioned that you've kind of done basically everything at the racetrack. How did you get to the flag stand, basically?
Well, just the timing was I went to work. The guy that ran the crew, and the crew at that point, we worked Lernerville on Friday, Mercer on Saturday, and Tri-City on Sunday. The guy's name was Hap Jones, who was Vivian Jones that races now. It would have been her great-grandfather. But he decided he wanted to, he had enough. He was going to move on with his life. He was a real good guy. I enjoyed working for him. But he left, and there was a guy flagging. His name was Kent Michaels. And so he took over the crew chief aspect of things. And by the end of 79, the start of 1980, I had moved to the flag stand.
So, what was it about flagging that you kind of chose it as kind of your full, kind of not necessarily your full time, but that was your like official position that you were going to stay as?
It was, I mean, I wanted to be, I grew up watching races, and I thought different things along the way that I could make better, or, I basically, I wanted to be the guy in charge. I wanted to be the guy out front, and I wanted to see the races, so that's where I wanted to be. So once I got there, I never gave it up until the race directing stuff came along, and my wife, she didn't really. I got away with being on a flag stand 3 or 4 nights a week for, 4 decades, and never got, other than a few cuts and bruises here and there. But I think it was just time, she didn't want me to do that anymore. So the race directing thing came along, and the race director is really, I tell people, it's really what the flagman used to do. The only difference is I didn't have to take 2 showers every night when I came home. That's all.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to talk about with the flagging, getting into flagging. Did you have to was there anything you really needed to learn or practice? I know I can't, number one, twirling a flag or whatever, I couldn't do that whole stuff. But the position in general, I guess, seems like it's a lot kind of on your mind. You got to watch a lot of things. Was it hard to kind of adapt to?
Well, it was a lot harder back then. I mean, I grew up watching guys, and I worked with Kent for a half or 3/4 of a year there. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there was no race director. There, most places didn't have an assistant at that time. The assistant was the guy in the infield that was lining up the cars. So, there was a lot of responsibility because you were the only set of eyes watching the entire track. So, different places would have, they have firemen and corners and stuff like that if you miss something, but you certainly you tried not to miss anything for sure.
Now, you mentioned cuts and bruises in the flag stand. I've never gotten to hear the full story, but I've heard rumors. I was just curious if we could hear the Larry Kugel story at PPMS.
Oh, Larry's a good guy. I mean, we're buddies now. We were both younger. I made a decision. I guess I was putting him to the back for something, I think, and he didn't agree with that decision. So this happened at Pittsburgh, and so he stopped in the front straightaway and started to get out of his car. And unfortunately, when he did that, he forgot to put the car in gear, so it then drifted down across the racetrack and hit the tires on the inside, which made him even angrier. but but I had really good help. Smokey Shemp, who's at Lernerville in Pittsburgh to this day, he got things settled down before they ever got to me, which is good. And not years ago at Sharon, I had to deal with. Actually, I was the assistant then, but Tommy Christiak and the flagman and Tommy's dad and I had and that was there was some. Physical contact with that one, but I mean, I did this. I don't know. I would think thousands of times, and there really wasn't very much of that stuff. I mean, I don't like to dwell on that because there just really wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah. Greg, on your thing you sent me here, this is a kind of another thing I put an asterisk by and looked at. You said that in the 1990s, you wrote a column for local papers. So, like, the local papers in that area would have been, like, the Derrick and the News Herald. So, how long did you do that? That was another thing I didn't know. I thought that was super interesting.
Oh, I don't know. 3 or 4 years, maybe 5. It just, I mean, back in those days, and I almost always worked 3 nights a week. Wasn't always the same 3 tracks, but always 3 nights a week. And then back in those days, tracks would have a midweek special one a month. Well, I was doing 3 tracks, so honestly, it was 4 nights a week a lot of time. Of course, I had a full-time job and a family, and writing a column, it was just really a lot. I enjoyed doing it, and I wouldn't mind maybe doing it again at some point. But I just the position I'm in now, I end up filling in more than I want to actually, but if I can help places, a lot of these places have done favors for me over the years. So if I can help them, it's really hard for me to say no.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting because I know when Chase and I go to try and record like an episode of the show where we're talking about results from, like, for example, like the Penn Ohio sanctioning body tracks, and we go through results, that is hard just to get a lot of those things, and it's a process. Like, it's time consuming. Like, we've spent like 30 minutes before an episode just trying to get results from like 4 or 5 tracks that raced on a weekend where there was a lot of rain. Like, it also depends on the divisions.
And the tracks don't. Some tracks do an excellent job, but other tracks don't do a very good job.
Right.
You get a lot of it off of My Race Pass, and that's a lot easier than it used to be back. But I mean, of course, you had Area Auto Racing and Tri-State Auto Racing News, but I didn't get them until Thursday. Well, that's time for the next weekend by then. But I mean, people would actually mail, if you young guys can believe it, the mailman delivered press releases to your house. So yeah. I know that's hard for you to understand, but that's how it
was. Chase, go ahead, ask like 2 questions.
Greg, if you could bring back one like local-ish track back to life today, what track would it be?
Boy, it depends how far back you want to go. I think the most popular answer you'd get from most people would be Challenger, and Challenger was a great place, and that would be on my list too. If you want to go back far enough, I mean, there was a place called Pine Grove in Shippensville, just what would be west of Clarion. There was they had NASCAR races there,
wow.
Just off of 322, and I mean it was a big deal back in its day. A place like that being so close to home, that would be really cool. There's Hickory and there's a lot of places. I miss them. I miss a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories about Challenger, the end of the year race at Challenger. I can't remember.
Well, that was Fall Fest, they called that.
That's it.
And that was really a precursor to like the Steel City Stampede. That was really the first one that would bring in 8, 9, 10 divisions and just a weekend of, you race from 2 o'clock in the afternoon till midnight, 3 days in a row.
Yeah. I know I've heard stories and stuff. I don't, it's kind of crazy, but from all the stuff I've heard growing up, I do wish that, like, that I think that would be cool. I don't know much about it, but there's just like an aura kind of when Challenger comes up in a conversation, especially around like my people. It's like everyone holds it to kind of a standard. It's like I would certainly like to be
I mean,
able to
the
witness
racing
it.
was really good. It was the right size of racetrack, and it's just one of those deals that it became a weekend event.
Right. Yeah.
Speaking of like closing racetracks and older racetracks, Knox is kind of doomed for the grave, it seems, and the people of Western PA want to know, Greg, what's it going to take for you to buy up Knox and bring it back to life?
A whole lot of money, Chase. And I'm not going back. I'm retired, and I'm not going back to work at this.
That was actually another one of my questions: is are you retired?
Oh yeah, I am retired, and I can go to races whenever I want, and every day's Saturday, so it doesn't matter if I get home late or whatever.
Yeah. I'm gonna jump in there because I think it's a good segue. Of course, there's still some things I do want to talk about from the document you sent me, but I do want to cover this while it's there. Chase just talked about Knox. That was in my opinion, I think it's a really interesting topic because ever since Knox came back and was under new ownership, they had one or two good seasons there, and then it's in the state that it's been for the last 2 years now. I want to kind of associate that with kind of the state of the sport in a way. I wanted to get your opinion, Greg. How do you think that the state of like our racing scene, how do you think it's doing? Do you think it's growing? Do you think it's kind of flatlined, or do you think it's getting worse?
I mean, it's easy. It's changing. It's changing for sure, and there are all across the country, and it is locally as well. There are different racetracks have different levels of success, and the success is you can't have 50,000 to win shows if you only set 2,000 people in the grandstand. So I still think every racetrack can survive if they tighten up their programs, make schedules that make sense. It is more expensive. Fuel is expensive again this year, unfortunately. One of the issues is, in this particular area, I think more so than any place in the country, is that we have like 40 divisions, and we've got plenty of racers, but you can't cut your mom's apple pie into 40 different slices, or the slices get pretty small.
Right.
It's if you go to Central PA, there are 3 different kinds of sprint cars, but that's pretty much it. If you go up into upstate New York, there are 2 or 3 different kinds of modifieds, but that's pretty much it. But here we have just 3 or 4 classes of sprint cars, 3 or 4 classes of late models. We got a couple 3 classes of economods, and that just makes it tough.
Right.
And the tracks working together, not running on the same nights, not scheduling the same classes on the same nights. They have to stop looking at each other as competition and looking at each other as how, if we grow the sport, each track can be more successful.
Yeah. I certainly think kind of the last thing you just said there, from my personal opinion, I think would be the kind of ultimate thing to see tracks come together, and it would be hard to do that because at the end of the day, I think a lot of track owners do kind of look at things obviously as it's like this is a a thing to them, rather than they might not be as concerned about the state of racing as they are how that facility is doing for them.
Right. But
and-
they have to look at the bigger picture than that.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think that would, if we, in racing, I think if we wanted to see the sport grow, I do think, exactly like you said, I think a lot of tracks do look at each other as competition. And I agree with that. And you brought up an interesting point, kind of talking about the divisions. That was another question I had. Obviously, there's a ton of divisions. Do you see, that staying like that, or do you see that now that we've got all these divisions now, we've got so much stuff that, do you think that a lot of divisions are going to start to fall off more and more around this area, or do you think
that happens, but it's been like that. Not all of my life, because it started out when I was a kid. Tri-City had one division, and then they had two divisions. They had a modified division and some kind of stock division. But honestly, this area, this area has had too many divisions most of my career, and then then we put the crate stuff on top of all that was already there. So I. Probably some drop off over time, but there used to be 6-cylinder modifieds here, and they're gone now. But because you can't hardly find inline 6-cylinder motors anymore, so
right,
that had as much to do with it as anything else, I think.
Yeah. Chase,
it just seems like it's kind of difficult to for extinction of a division, but it seems that a lot of the divisions are endangered, you would say.
It is, and when you got, there's enough cars to put on a weekly show, but then when you cut that in half and two tracks run the same class on the same night, then there's not,
Yeah.
So that's what that's what needs to happen now. Now tracks do. I just helped with putting a deal together with Pittsburgh and Lernerville for the Penn Ohio cars, where there's a bonus program for the top 3 average finishers on weekends when they both get, they're both running pro stocks and they both get the shows in. It's 500 total. I think it's, what is it, 200, 250, 150, and whatever comes to 500 there in 100. So that's tracks working together to try to help build the car count. Sharon's not running stock cars very many times this year. Pittsburgh was struggling. Lernerville actually does pretty well with stock cars, but they were willing to step up and help out to try to build a class and make what, like I say, if one track has success, it can get people more, and they have nice full fields and put on good programs that people want to go to see more of that, maybe see it in a different place, So, hopefully that kind of stuff, and it puts a few extra dollars in the racers' pockets which they can always use. So, I like to help out. If I have known so many people over the years, and I know the track owners, and I know what they're up against, and money's not just falling out of these guys' pockets from running a racetrack. So you have to think this stuff through, and they have to see the racers get more money. Does it help the track? Because it has to go both ways.
Right. And that, I feel like that's another thing, and that when you kind of go back to the conversation of tracks trying to help each other, I feel like it's kind of a two-edged sword, because it's like, in a perfect world where tracks all were under the same umbrella and wanted to help each other out, for the betterment of racing as a whole. But then you also have to think, though, too, that, most owners, exactly like you said, they're just trying to make sure they can keep the facility up and going as well. So it's like, there's a lot of things to do something like for tracks to work together. I'm sure that it takes energy, time, and money to put something like that together. So it's like I think it's kind of
Yeah, it really does, and like I say, it has to work. It has to be something that the racers can potentially benefit from,
yeah.
and both tracks have to be able to. You can't just stay stagnant in this day and age. The racing stuff has changed so much. The technology, the streaming, the computerized scoring. The radios are now so much better. We didn't have them at all, and then they weren't very good. So nothing stands still, and you can't stand still either. You have to stay up with this kind of thing. Places use My Race Pass. I mean, I can't believe why would you not do that in this day and age? It just doesn't make it actually would make your own life easier. So why would you not?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Chase joked last week we were doing our virtual iRacing event, and he was like, "Why don't we just what if there was a way that we could have this on my?"
Yeah,
race
Jake
pass?
was trying to find the timing and scoring or the results or something. I said, just look, it's on my race pass.
I couldn't do it. I'm going down through all these names. I'm trying to count people. I'm like, this sucks. I can't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just free publicity. I mean, even people, if they can't come to your track, but they can see, oh, look, this guy has 27 410 sprints tonight. I didn't know they got that many. And, oh, he went there. Did he go there because they pay better or the surface is better or what?
I do that. I do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you and everybody else does, Chase. So why would you not want your information on
Yeah,
there?
exactly. I know, like, just growing up and stuff, as it kind of became more and more prevalent, being able to access it with, like, smartphones and stuff, it's cool, if we're in the shop one night on a night we got rained out, that we can check in on race pass and tracks that didn't get rained out. It's like, oh, okay, this is what's going on. I think it's super awesome. Definitely,
I mean, we used to, and all the older races, I'm sure your dad, Jake, would say this, but, we would, for a while, I worked at Raceway 7, and if it rained out, I knew where every payphone between there and Lernerville was, and as soon as I knew it rained out, we made a dash for the truck, and we headed down there, and we'd stop to we didn't have radar on our phones or anything like that. We didn't have phones, so you'd stop the payphone, call. Oh yeah, we're still going. All right, drive another 25 miles and call again.
Yeah. I want to pivot back a little bit. That was definitely a good conversation I wanted to have. I know a lot of people mainly last year, we kind of got away from asking it for a little bit because I think we kind of started interviewing some guys that maybe are kind of fresher to the sport. So we kind of got away from that conversation a little bit. But it was certainly something I wanted to ask you because, you've been around this sport for a very long time. So I'm glad to get your kind of opinion and voice on that thing. But another thing you had here, you flagged in Sharon, State Line, and Erie's.
I did, yes.
All in one season. So what that basically entails was that you were working in 3 different states every weekend. What was that like?
Right. Yeah. They were all not much more than an hour from the house, so it really wasn't that big a deal.
Right.
But I mean, Sharon was just over the line in Ohio, and State Line was just over the line in New York, and Erie was in Pennsylvania. So it just worked out that way. It's just kind of cool.
Yeah. Now, flagging all 3 of those tracks, like if you go from one track to the other, does your approach to anything change when you were doing it, or were you just doing the same thing?
No, I mean my approach was the same. The rules were a little different. State Line, particularly back then, and even to this day, I mean their regular show on a Saturday night was 4 divisions. There was they called them spectators, which were just junkyard cars almost. And cadets, which would be more like our pro stocks, and then a limited late model. But in those 4 classes, I would say they averaged 225 cars a night.
Wow.
That's pretty good.
So I mean, there would be 100 of the spectator cars, and they raced for a trophy. So they'd run 3 features for them with 30 plus cars in each one. but their rules and stuff were a little different, so you had to kind of learn what they were, and you did.
Go ahead, get back to it. Ask some questions.
All right, we'll switch gears a little bit here. Greg, what's one or two events or races every year that you kind of look forward to more than others?
I mean, that's changed so much over the years. Now, I would say, the firecracker is certainly one of them. Sharon has some outlaw shows and the Don Martin at Lernerville. I like the Ed Laboon that Vince does at Pittsburgh and the Pittsburgher. Uh, and I really enjoy the Steel City Stampede. I mean, that's too much racing. I mean, a lot of people don't like that, and I understand, but I'm a race fan. I'll watch and as long as there's a good competitive race out there.
Right.
We're huge Stampede fans here.
Love the Stampede.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, when I first started, one of the biggest shows early on, and I've been really fortunate. I mean, I flagged maybe the first 20 Pittsburghers, maybe the first 10 Sharon Nationals, which was a huge deal back at that time. Uh, I've just been really fortunate to be able to be involved in a lot of that kind of stuff over the years.
the Stampede, like, is a kind of an example, but like Chase, I met Chase at a go-kart track, but we became friends through these like 2-day events and stuff like the Stampede and when like the 10K race at Sharon was going
Like
on.
Apple Fest.
Mm-hmm. Those
Right.
were
Yeah.
always I love those ones. I definitely cherish them. They were always, in my opinion, the most fun because it's like, most of the time you go to the racetrack and you're watching racing or you're doing something racing related, but it's also fun to just be there when it's like, that's not what you're doing. You're just kind of talking with the people that are there. So
It
it's like,
is, and you don't get lots of times you're in and out in 3 or 4 hours, and you're racing your car, you're working on your car, and you just don't have time. And I like it because you get to see guys from up north and guys from down south and guys that don't usually get a chance to race against each other.
yeah.
You know, uh, so I just like to see how they stack up. This guy's been winning everything at State Line and Erie's. Now, if he comes to Mercer, how's he going to do there? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Now, Greg, I'm not sure how well you keep track of how many races you go to every year, but what's a rough estimate at least? What's the most amount of races you've been to in a year?
I never did keep track. When I was flagging, I would say probably 85 races a year for all those years. But then I had different friends that you always kept track. And so I thought, I want to be able to prove that I did 100 one year. So I tried it the first year and I got to 99 and I could not get
Oh,
another race. But I did it the next year and I made it to 101. So,
That's
but, that I found myself going to races to facilities that I didn't really care about. I'm not really interested in doing that anymore. So,
yeah. Um,
so but I'll still, I'll still do 80 to 90 because there's 80 to 90 shows I want to see.
right. Yeah. Um, Chase, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit before I come back to you. This is a question I talked to Chase about before um the show started, before you got in here, Greg, and I wanted to, and I think this is a kind of a hard question because you've been around the sport for a while and you've seen a lot of amazing talent. I want to know who, some of the, I guess I could say it like this. Who would you say in kind of, the local racing scene that we're accustomed to, who is probably the Mount Rushmore of some of the best drivers you've seen throughout,
ooh.
kind of your
I mean,
time in sport?
that is really tough, man.
Mhm.
I mean, nationally or just guys that ran locally or.
Kind of the local guys that you got to watch. Maybe you got to watch, a majority of their careers. Maybe you didn't catch their whole career.
Yeah, I mean, when I was growing up, there's, in the sprint cars, it was Lou Blaney was the guy, and then later he moved to modifieds. Uh, Ralph Corderson they called him the master of Mercer. I mean, he was actually, when the All-Star Circuit of Champions started, he was their first champion that year. I mean, in the late models, guys like Bob Waring they were successful locally and regionally as well. I mean, guys didn't travel to California and race back then, but
Right.
oh gosh, you know, I'm sure I'm forgetting other guys along the way, but those were certainly three of the best. I don't think anybody could argue with that.
Right. I've definitely heard about like Lou Blaney. That's one I've definitely heard of. But I don't know. I kind of wanted to ask you that question honestly, kind of from the purpose that I knew I might maybe even get a driver I might not be familiar with. So I kind of jotted down some names and see if I can't run it past some people's heads and see if I can learn about a driver I maybe didn't know. But I definitely knew about Lou Blaney. But yeah.
The thing about Lou was, and actually your dad is like this to a degree, but he would get out of, might have a tremendous battle with some guy, and take the lead going into turn 3, coming down from the checkered flag, and he go to the scales, come to victory lane, get out of his car, and I'm telling you, his heart rate was like 65. He just never got excited at all. And if you get excited, then you can't breathe right, you can't concentrate, you can't hit your marks. So you got to be able to, you've raced some now, Jake. I mean, yes, some of it is done with your right foot, but so much more of it is done with what's between your ears if you're going to be successful about it. And that's, a lot of guys can be fast, but not everybody that's fast can think at the same time.
Right. That's definitely something.
I just really, really appreciate guys that can turn that, can turn racing into an art form like that.
Right.
You show the guy on the outside, you finally get him to move up, and you pass him on the inside, which is where you needed to be the whole time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I got the answer I was looking for with that one. Chase, go ahead with some more.
Greg, what's one track that should be on everybody's bucket list, every race fan's bucket list?
Oh, I mean, I'm assuming they've been to all the tracks, close to around here. I mean, we got some, Lernerville and Sharon are two of the really nicest facilities that you're going to find, and that's not to take away from the other places. I mean, I've seen good races at all of them, but I mean, on a regional level, certainly Port Royal has to be right up there. We're fortunate in this area to have, Port Royal's a 3-hour trip, but we're fortunate to have some really nice facilities, and you don't understand how nice they are until you travel around to some of the other ones that you hear about sometimes, and you get there and they're not very nice places at all.
Right. Yeah. I would love to go to Port Royal. I don't know, some type of event just to like go and be a spectator. I think would be so awesome. That's one I would love to go to. Not here. I want to go to Charlotte too. I've never been to Charlotte. I think Charlotte would be awesome.
Well, I mean, Charlotte is a state-of-the-art facility for sure. They only really run it a couple of weekends a year, and I think that hurts the track surface some, so it can be a little hit and miss. But as far as the venue, I mean, it's state-of-the-art. My son and son-in-law and I are going to Knoxville this year. I've never been because I always worked and wouldn't leave a racetrack hanging, and it's during the summer. But I am going. While I'm still young enough to make the trip, I'm going to do that this year. And of course, Eldora, I mean, is iconic.
Yeah. I'm glad we kind of segued to tracks because this was another thing I had marked here. So, Greg, you worked as an official at a track in Canada. So
I did.
Humberstone Speedway, Port Colborne. So What can you tell us about that experience? I thought that was really intriguing.
I went up there with, I'm not sure if it was Fast Track or Rush at the time. And Todd Beatner and I, and I'm sure Tyler Beatner was there as well, and went up and did one of their series races there. And again, it's not very far across the border. It seems to me 10 miles or something maybe. Uh, but it was, I'm not sure if it's even still active, to tell you the truth. But it was a nice facility.
Yeah, I thought that was super interesting that you'd been, worked as an official outside of the country as well. That's certainly really cool.
Yeah.
Chase, go ahead and ask your whatever bangers you got left, because
I think this is the last one I got. Greg, what are your? I mean, you say you retired, but what are your plans for this year? Are you going to be doing any race directing or anything?
Oh, I'm sure I will. Sharon, Mike Leone is their race director, but he travels with the Rush series, and so he misses, I don't know, 6, 7 nights a year. So I fill in there. I often get calls from Pittsburgh or Lernerville, or actually lots of other places. But I'm a little particular. It's just a real struggle right now. And you mentioned Knox before. I mean, one of the issues is there are not enough people to work at these places to put on a quality program. And you can't, you don't have to be a genius to do this stuff. I mean, I certainly would have never been able to do it if that was a prerequisite. But you do have to know something, and you have to care. Uh, and it's just hard. I mean, when I started doing this, you had to like know somebody, get on a waiting list to be an official kind of thing. And now it's just hard to get enough people. I mean, I've known tracks that could not reschedule special events because they couldn't operate their concession stands because they didn't have enough people, and you need to have the concessions to have a chance to break even or make money. So it's tough.
right. Chase, do you have anything else?
That was really all I had.
Yeah. I did want to ask you, Greg. I mean, sometimes people come on here and they have questions for us. Do you have any questions for me and Chase? I mean, we can come on here and we ask you like 45 questions.
Well, what do we have to do to get people your age more interested? How do we have to change the program? Is there something that we can do? You know, when I was growing up, there wasn't. It would have been my choice anyway. But you didn't have a lot of entertainment choices. You couldn't stay home and race on the computer or pick any movie that's ever been made on Netflix and watch it, or that kind of thing. What attracts 20-something-year-old guys?
I I could go really deep into this because I think this is really interesting. I've actually thought about this. I think personally, I don't think this is the end all be all to get people our age more interested. But I will say that if there is one thing that you can say about people Chase and I's age now is that we are all chronically addicted to our cell phones and scrolling TikTok and Instagram or whatever it may be. Now, with that being said, I've noticed that, like, and I couldn't pinpoint, I guess, I'm trying to think of an exact maybe example, but I think that trying to, I guess as a whole, what I'm trying to say is I think promotion and social media in the format that we're accustomed to, so like if a track, for example, would open up a TikTok page and post like something funny of them doing something, or like a clip of a race that one of us could just be scrolling and hit, and it's like, oh, that's cool, I wonder what this is, and they click on it. That's engagement for, something that they might not have known about. I do think that there's still a love for racing. I just think it's like kind of how you said, like I don't think people really like go it's easy to stay in the house and like not do anything on a on a Friday or
It
Saturday.
is, and I think those are all good points. I think the video stuff that Chase does can really help with that.
Mhm.
And again, the trouble is getting people to work at the tracks that even that stuff you just mentioned there. TikTok, I heard of that before, but whatever else you said there, I have no idea what that even is. So I can't do that.
Right.
Uh, So but we need young people to get involved. Part of the problem is I think the cars nowadays they're so reliable and you can't work on them. But my age group had, you know, 68 Mustangs and Camaros and Fairlanes and stuff, and you had to know like a little bit of something because it was going to break down and you had to get home somehow. And that's just not the case anymore. But it is what it is. You can't change that. So I think what you're saying about TikTok and social media stuff, I think it is really important. It's just that the tracks need to be able to, and I mean, I can tell you if either one of you or anybody that wants to get involved doing something like that, any racetrack would be glad to have them. And if they can't find a racetrack, tell them to get a hold of me and I'll get them to one that will.
There's your
Uh,
call out right there. Everybody heard that.
Yeah,
Yep.
I
I
think
mean,
it
it-
is important
Yeah.
because like I honestly think that like any track that if I think it would be worth almost of course I don't know how much people you'd have to I don't even know if you have to pay somebody to do that, but I think it would totally be worth it for a track that to add anyone that can make some type of short styled video and that's into social media to their staff, because stuff like that I think is important just because I've always viewed it as like a lottery system. It's like because you can post on social media and it's like something could just go viral at any point. It's like there's nothing in
Right.
particular that has to happen. And it's like if that's let's say
You
500,000
get the right-
people see it, I mean,
Yep. Yeah, I mean Chase gets the right video clip, and I mean you've posted stuff, Chase, and I'm sure some of it does okay, and some of it does way better than you ever thought it would. Man, it's the right car, it's the color, it's
Yeah,
I don't know
some
what
reasons
it
I
is.
can't even figure out. I'll make a video I think is great and it'll do horribly, and I'll make a video that I think is it's all right and it'll do even better than the other one. So
Right,
it's all
but
it's
yeah, I
all
mean that's and the national sanctions are they're latching on to that some, but they've got 200 employees, not
Right.
not 5 that work in the office, that.
Yeah.
So that's the issue. But whatever the issue is, we have to figure a way.
Yeah. I do think though, I think now, I mean I've seen with NASCAR, I think NASCAR is starting to get a little bit more popular again with younger people because they've switched their media and marketing campaigns to where it's more catered to stuff that like we see, like Chase and I would see on our phones. And I think this year, and they have drivers that are younger now that they're like, oh, look at this. And it's like they're pushing
Yeah.
things, they put it in our faces. And I think it's starting to get a little bit more popular. And that's kind of where I come from with that is like, I think that's a pretty good example. I see stuff like that. But exactly kind of what you said, though. I mean, a lot of the bigger series that are doing that stuff, they have a lot more resources. I mean, I don't think it's as easy for a track to just find someone that would make dedicate their however much time it takes to just focus on doing media stuff for them, because there's probably a lot more to that than just making videos. It's would probably entail doing like posting like events and stats and stuff, but I do think that is pretty important. But I don't know, that's kind of where I come from.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think that was I didn't know what the right answer was, but now that you've said it, I think that is the right answer.
I don't think it's a set in stone, but
Well, that kind of stuff is, I don't know that it's free, but it's not, I mean, 30 years ago, you had to run ads in your local paper and in the racing papers and, print flyers and that kind of stuff. And all that stuff cost money. and you had to have somebody pass out the flyers, and that, where you can reach a lot more people effectively for probably less money nowadays, but you have to know how to do it.
Yeah. I don't know. I like it's interesting. I just kind of I don't think, like I said, it's the end all be all for anything like that. I do think there's a lot more that goes into, like, the point you made about, like, I guess the like people our age aren't as more car oriented, because it's like, you don't have to know a lot about cars if you're growing up now. It's like you get a car and it's like, oh, I'm driving the car and I gotta worry about it.
We couldn't wait for the first snow when I was 18 years old, because you find a parking lot someplace and make donuts until you got sick to your stomach. You can't really do that with a front wheel drive car very well. You can, I guess, do it, but
Right.
it's yeah, things are different, but life changes and business changes.
Yeah.
I was involved in business all my life, and you can't, what you did 30 years ago, I guarantee you won't work no matter what business you're in today.
Right.
So
Yeah. But Chase, do you have anything to add on to that, or anything? Or you?
No, not really.
Yeah.
no, well, keep up the good work, guys. I mean, people watch this, and I don't know if you can. I know how many people watch live, but can you tell how many views something got after it's posted?
Yeah. If all the stuff on YouTube, we can see how many people have watched it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, and sometimes it's not the number; it's just the right person. I
Right.
mean, that's, if you can, I've always said, and I still try to this day to take somebody new to the racetrack every year. Now, I'm pretty old, my friends are pretty old, so I'm running out of people. But I already have something set up actually for this year. But you just, if you can turn them in to a race fan that goes to 4 more races that year, if everybody did that, it would make a real difference.
Right.
But then the racetracks have to do their part too. They also have to tighten up their program. They have to have a quality program that people want to see, and not sitting for hours watching graders and water trucks and divisions with 5 cars in them.
Right. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's there's done on both sides.
Yeah. It all kind of pieces together. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's all we got. This has been a great
Okay.
time, Greg. Thank you so much for coming on. Like I said earlier, we knew you were going to be a guest at some point. So sorry it took so long to get to you, but we're definitely happy we finally got to talk to you. Thank you for coming on here, and actually thank you for sending this document too. This has been awesome to go down through this stuff and hit some of the things and talk about some of the important stuff in your career. Yeah, thanks, Greg. We really appreciate it. We'll have this episode out here in probably like a week or so, but yeah,
Okay.
thank you for coming
Anytime,
on.
guys.
Yep.
All right.
Hey, we'll see everybody here pretty soon. I don't know. We'll probably have another guest for you at some point, but thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys.